Good morning. We're going to cover the homework for chapter 30, one question and probably one video at a time. Right now, I'm going to go through the first question, number 1, with my handy whiteboard here. Consider the graph at the right, which depicts the Lorenz curve for countries X, Y, and Z. And then we're going to be asked some questions about it, starting with the least income inequality. So in my graph to my right, I didn't quite set up everything. This has shown up in the past. I didn't quite set up everything that you see in the book because I saw this as an opportunity to review what's going on in the graph. What we have here is 100%. I'm sorry, that's a point. We have the cumulative percent of the population, which goes out from 0, no people in the population, to 100% of people in the population. And we have the cumulative percent of income. Your text calls it money income. I went through in our discussion about exactly how we might measure that, and very often this is adjusted gross income, which has some implications of how that's measured. But usually when you hear about this, sometimes you hear this discussed on TV, like particularly on probably MSNBC, you might hear or see this model discussed. They generalize with the term income, so that's what I've done here. That's 100% of the income in the economy. So by the way we've set things up here, 100% of the households in an economy must be making 100% of the income. So that's a certainty, and that's basically our box. And what we have at this 45-degree line would represent perfect equality, where 20% of the population was making 20% of the income and 50% of the population was making 50% of the income. But in actuality, it doesn't work that way. As we move up this line or along our horizontal axis, as we look at different percentages of the population, a small percentage of the population only makes very little income, and then it continues on until a large percentage of the population, as we get into the richest people, it's a fewer number of people who make a lot of income. So we have a different slope here than 1. So now I'm going to use colors to fill this in just exactly like it is in the book. We are given some different countries. I'm looking at this and I'm not quite sure what the X is useful for, because that's just one of the gaps. So I'm going to probably not write the X. So there's country Z and country Y. I think country X is supposed to be representing, the idea is that one is right on our 45-degree line right here. I'll go ahead and write it. I don't think we are referencing that X again. I suppose you're, I know why he did it. He did it to make the question more challenging. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So we're looking at this. This would be perfect equality, the black line, a 45-degree line. And then we have 2 countries here, which are how countries, when we model them, are going to look. And then we're asked which country has the least income inequality. Well, that would be country X, because that's perfect inequality right along the 45-degree line. And then which country has the most income inequality? Well, that would be country Z, because their curve dips the least. And where we can really see the meaning of this is some small percentage of the population, as we examine them, we can account for a large percentage of the income along here. That's where the slope is very steep as we move toward the last percentage of population getting a large percentage of income along this segment. So country Z has the most inequality. It also would have the largest gap here. That's what the model is useful for. At a glance, we can see it. Then in letter C, countries Y and Z are identical in all but one respect. Just imagine that. We have this outcome, but they're identical in all ways but one respect. We did discuss some challenges with the model. Population distribution. The share of the population made up of children below working age is much higher in country Z. We examine why that would be so, I think. Recently, however, birth rates have declined in country Z and risen in country Y. Assuming that countries remain identical in all other respects, would you expect that in 20 years the Lorenz curves for the two countries will be closer together or farther apart? And then he really kind of tells us the answer, I think, with this hint. According to the age earnings cycle, what typically happens to income as individuals begin working, as an individual begins working and ages? Well, my kids are 9 and 11, and their income is pretty low, but they do count as part of the population, a percentage of the population. They're adding to that figure down here, but their income is actually 0. So the more people in the population that have a 0 or near 0 income because they're only 10, the flatter will be the curve along here, because we could say they're the low income portion of the population and there are a lot of them. So now over time, they'll enter working age. So what the author is saying is that this country currently has a lot of kids, so a large percentage of the population is earning 0 income. So then a smaller relative to Y percentage is earning higher income. So that explains, if that's the only difference between them, that entirely explains why they're not the same line. Now, over time, this country is going to start having more kids, and this one's going to, those kids that they've already had are going to age. So what would we expect to happen to these lines? This gap would close. This one would dip down, and this one would start to rise up until they became the same. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything there. Yeah. Country Z is going to start to close that gap on country Y as their kids get jobs and start to get more income. A larger percentage of their population will be earning income when they get older. And these country Y, these are now kids who were born, and now they're going to have a larger percentage of their population not making income. So that's number 1.